Every minute, 20 people leave everything behind to escape war, persecution, or even terror. This is according to the United Nations. Every year on June 20th, the world marks World Refugee Day. It celebrates strength and courage. On Monday, 41 companies publicly pledged to provide jobs for more than 250,000 refugees in Europe. Right now, I want to bring in Kelsey Norman. She's Director of Women's Rights, Human Rights, and Refugees Program for Rice University's Baker Institute. Kelsey, thank you so much for coming on the show this morning. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
Right now, I want to tell our listeners and our viewers that you're joining us from Egypt this morning.
That's right, yeah.
Afternoon where you are, right? Yeah. What are you doing over there? What's the mission?
So I'm here for some research this summer. Egypt's also a really important refugee and migrant hosting state. And right now, hundreds of thousands of Sudanese are arriving kind of as we speak as a result of the war in Sudan.
What is the most common reason people leave their home country?
Well, people leave their home countries for many reasons. For people who qualify as refugees, which is a particular legal status, they have to have left their country because of persecution, whether that's based on race or religion or membership in a particular social or ethnic group. So refugees are sort of one set of a broader group of people who have to flee their home countries. But not everyone who flees their home countries necessarily qualifies for refugee status. So people that have to leave as a result of climate change, for example, or generalized violence or violence against women or sort of gang activities, those are not going to qualify someone for refugee status.
I know you mentioned people arriving in Egypt, hundreds of thousands of refugees fleeing the civil war happening in Sudan. What has been your firsthand experience with the current migration happening now?
Well, so far I've just been meeting with some of the organizations that are trying to provide services to arriving people from Sudan. People who maybe they'll have refugee status, maybe they're going to eventually obtain that, but are just trying to find, shelter, access to basic services, and maybe are trying to figure out how long they're going to stay in Egypt because it's not clear how long the situation in Sudan is going to go on for. And that's how a lot of refugees feel, uncertainty about whether to stay where they are, whether to try and go somewhere else, but ultimately they're all seeking safety and protection.
Yeah, I know I spent some time a year ago in Poland covering the invasion of Ukraine, and we went back 1 year later this past February, and the common theme that we saw within that 1 year, many of these refugees who are fleeing Ukraine, they want that safety, they need that safety, but they don't want to venture too far away from home in the hopes of maybe possibly returning. And so I know it's different for different people, but what countries right now have the highest number of arriving refugees?
Well, you brought up a really important point. So most refugees are going to first go to a neighboring country, whether, in the case of Syria, that was countries like Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, or in the case of Ukrainians, countries in Eastern Europe like Poland, as you mentioned. So most people are going to look first to a neighboring country, and then if the situation isn't so good in that neighboring country, maybe then they'll look further afield. But so as a result, you see countries like Bangladesh hosting Rohingya refugees, or countries neighboring Afghanistan like Iran and Pakistan hosting the largest number of Afghans. For Syrians, again, Turkey became the largest country hosting refugees in the entire world, so nearly 4 million refugees. So most countries hosting refugees are in the global south or developing countries, but Ukraine did change that to some extent because then we ended up with a lot of refugees in European countries.
Based on my experience when talking about refugees, sometimes the meaning of what a refugee is gets lost in context depending on that conversation and what that conversation is about. What are the most common misconceptions when it comes to refugees? And why is it important for people to continue to learn about refugees?
I think the biggest misconception and probably the most damaging narrative of refugees is that they're going to be a burden for a country that hosts refugees. And we know from academic studies and from personal experiences for those who have met and worked with refugees that they can really be a boon for the countries that end up hosting them. If we talk about the U.S., for example, which welcomes refugees from all over the world, then we can talk about, refugees who have succeeded so much, whether it's in terms of economic contributions or just contributing to cities and revitalizing societal fabrics within urban spaces. So there's so much that refugees bring to the table, and it would be helpful, and we can back this up again with research, if the narrative could be more about the contributions that they can bring rather than any kind of burden that the political narratives around refugees might see them as becoming, when in reality they can be a huge asset to countries that host them.
Really great points. Kelsey, for people wanting to get involved or help out, how can they go about doing so?
Great. Well, for your viewers in Houston, there's so many amazing refugee organizations that work to help resettle refugees who are recently arrived. Houston is one of the largest resettlement cities in the U.S., and it has particularly been so for the last year with Afghans coming. So organizations like Refugee Services of Texas or Interfaith Ministries, the YMCA, they do really important work to help newcomers get integrated and, find access to work and just getting to know their neighbors. So if you have money, those organizations can certainly use contributions. But if what you have is more time, there's all these ways to volunteer and to help welcome people to Houston. And for those that are interested in helping refugees who are further afield in countries like Egypt or other developing countries, there's all sorts of ways to contribute to organizations like the UNHCR or smaller organizations too, who are doing really important work on the ground.
Kelsey Norman, thank you so much for your time this morning. I really appreciate your perspective. Safe travels, and we will talk to you soon.
Thank you for having me. Take care.